Great. This does show that we're live on our YouTube and Facebook page. So let me just double check here. Awesome. And I think we already have some people that are tuned in with us, which is terrific. So we'll go ahead and get started just pretty quickly. I know we're a few minutes behind. Thank you for your patience as we've overcome some tech issues that we ran into. And we, of course, wanted to surprise you today with a broadcast, as we generally do these on Mondays. But this week we changed it up on you. So we appreciate you for joining us, whether it's live right now or later on and just catching up with all the information. I do want to thank you for taking the time to be a part of our broadcast, for not only liking and engaging with the video, but for also sharing it out so others in your network can also see that we are live and can gain information about what's going on in our community. Now, if it's your very first time on our page, which we often do get some newbies, then we want to officially welcome you and ask you to hit the like button and follow if you're tuned in with us here on Facebook, to also hit the subscribe button if you are viewing this on YouTube. Now, we stream this on both platforms, so they're available to you at any point in time to rewind, rewatch, and even share out to people in your network that may have one platform or the next. That is our way of trying to communicate in numerous avenues. Now, one additional way that you can engage with us during this discussion is through the comment section on our video. Comments allow for you to either provide remarks at the opening, if you hear something you want to speak to, or if there's any particular question that you may want our guests to speak to, we'll be able to pull that from the comment section. And just as a quick example for you, if you are tuned in from our YouTube page, you'll see someone like Dave Carpenter, for example, give us a quick good morning message to both Councilor Seymour and myself. This will show that he's viewing it from the YouTube channel with the little red box and of course the photo that he has on there. So thank you for joining us, Dave. We also have our current board chairman, Parker Brown, that's joining us on our Facebook platform. Now, this is the Facebook version for you, for those of you that are streaming this live, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, morning, afternoon, evening, or even a weekend. Thank you for getting caught up with us. Now, our week starts and kicks off, of course, with our city updates. And this week we have City Councilor Rich Seymour to provide us those updates and remarks. And so I will no longer hoard up this discussion. I'm instead going to mute myself and turn this over to you.
Well, thank you, Juliet, and apologies to everyone. I was the technical issue. It's amazing, after 3 years, things still happen. I had my backup microphones and backup headsets, and nothing was connecting. And so appreciate always a little grace from the public when we run into these things. Things happen. None of us are perfect, but we try to work through those too. So thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for pushing this back. I was out of town last week and was trying to catch up yesterday. So Juliet was good enough, speaking of grace, to give me a day leeway to get my legs back under me. So it's been a busy couple weeks, especially last week in the city. And of course, I was out of town dealing with family issues. It was a good thing, but all is well. There was a study session last Monday, 2 prime topics on that, a presentation by our finance people on financing options for the new water treatment plant. We're looking quite a ways ahead on that. It'll be a while before we break ground on anything, but we need to have those options in place, and they came to council with varying options. We have cash on hand that we've been building. There's opportunities for water grants, a state revolving fund that deals with water infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure specifically. There is a infrastructure options as well, and then municipal bonds. So we're looking at an opportunity to try to layer and spread those costs across different ways. Of course, there's always a catch to everything. Sometimes the interest rate may not be the same. There are some of the grants and revolving funds that require certain type of construction that may not be beneficial through the process for our residents and may drive up the cost significantly. So staff is taking an at-all approach to water infrastructure. And to reiterate on this, last year in January, February of 2022, council cut the mid-range outdoor watering rate between 20,000 and 40,000 gallons, approximately 46%. Now, we did come back later in the year to project going forward and took just under a 5% increase on that. And that barely covers the cost of inflation on our goods and services and labor. But the model projection that we're using for rates going forward is our current rate that we have, and then an average annual increase of 5% or less, and that is manageable. And in many cases right now is under the cost of inflation, but our staff is building those projections into the cost of building the new water treatment plant. So, and that includes the acquisition of the land as well. So that was a busy part of that session. And then very lengthy and in-depth update on the new Westminster downtown. Some of the things that are on the books and coming forward very quickly here. The new townhomes on Harlan were fully occupied before they got them, or fully sold before they got them built. So we're looking at the opportunity for more owner-occupied units in the downtown. We've got 17 more condos coming, condo flats. It'll be the first condos built in Westminster in almost 20 years because of this construction defect laws that our legislature has kind of pushed down the road. And then townhomes, 31 of them that will match the neighborhood across the street right on 92nd. Marzak's Fine Foods is moving ahead. They've got a fence around the old bank building. They were thinking that they would, they like to repurpose buildings. It's a locally owned fine foods group that likes to take older buildings and repurpose them. But they thought they'd take the vault out. Well, unfortunately, the building is built around the vault, and that set them back a little bit. So they're going to repurpose that. I'm sure it'll be a good place to store cheese, maybe. We don't know. So we'll see how that works out. So Marzak's is moving ahead. And we've also had the preliminary, and there will be age-restricted, beautiful units for seniors that are going to go up right across from Westminster Row. So the one thing that we've been disappointed in, and it's tough in this market, is office space, because that's part of the component for the new downtown. Rooftops are critical because that's what supports retail. That's what we've got so far, is why you can't get into Tap and Burger. Most evenings, you got to wait in line to get a cup of coffee at Sweet Bloom in the morning, and you can't find a table to network at, and why Famille is busy too. And so those are all great things. Bonchon Korean Barbecue is opening soon, and then other retailers are coming to that. But we need office space down there. Right now, post-pandemic, with flex space and hybrid working, we're still trying to reach out and find the right mix of office in there. People are coming back to offices. Those of you who drive over the top or sit on 36 know that the traffic volume has picked up considerably. And some of the office builders have told us their clients don't want to be downtown, and they can't afford Boulder County. So we're perfectly aligned for that. So we'll continue to work on that, and as staff will too. So that was last Monday. I'll take a breath.
Sure.
Any questions?
Yeah, well, that was a lengthy update for sure. And for those of you that are joining us, because I see some more folks that have tuned in with us on this broadcast, we have Councilor Seymour with us, giving us an update on what's transpired last week in study session, and then he'll be discussing some of the items from this week. Of course, we pushed to today to adjust with his schedule. What he didn't share also is that he's got a new little one in his family, another grandbaby, and so we of course adjusted, because who doesn't love babies and understands that he has to be be in another more special place. Now, I do see our mayor with us, Councilor Seymour, who gave a good morning message earlier, but Nancy also shared, it would be interesting, instead of the cheese that you were sharing, that it might be a vault wine cellar. So a lot of opportunity for what that space might look like. We also had, it looks like, a quick comment come through from Dave Carpenter. So what I've done, and for all of you that are tuned in with us, if you do share a question or a comment, we'll be able to pull that up on the screen and be able to recognize it. It may not be right in the second that you type it out. So thank you for having the patience as I find the best spot to insert it into the dialogue and conversation. This comment from Dave was about last week's town hall with Councilor Baker making the assertion that Denver and Broomfield, et cetera, have rates of about, it looks like 2 to 3 per 1,000 gallons, less than ours. Can you provide context to that assertion that he's made, as you know, about our water rate? And we spoke to that a few minutes ago with some of what the Finance Committee was bringing up in study session related to options of paying and those rates that you mentioned a few moments ago.
Yeah, absolutely. There are cities, municipalities that have water rates that are lower than ours. And you can make that comparison across the board. I did a quick check when we were having this discussion a few weeks ago, and this is by no means comprehensive, but I picked some cities around us or similar size up and down the Front Range. I looked at Colorado Springs. That was an interesting conversation or calculation because they use cubic feet, and so everybody else uses thousands of gallons. And so luckily they had some of that on their website. Their outside watering rate is higher than ours, and that's a legacy system as well. Erie has an extremely higher rate than we do. Niwot's a small community, but their rate is higher. I went up and down the Front Range and just looking up on their website and doing quick calculations. So it absolutely is impossible to compare system to system. Everybody has different system needs that may have been not taken care of in the past because of financing. Erie's dealing with the fact that they didn't have anything and now they have everything. But on the other side, Erie's getting millions of dollars in tap fees for every property that's being thrown up right now too. So, I don't know their circumstances, so it's not my place to call out another municipality for their rates. And, Denver is an amazing legacy water system with, I'm not sure if you can compare it to a behemoth like that, but looking at Colorado Springs and their rate, and they're about 200,000, 250,000 people now. Their rate runs higher than ours too. So it's a balancing act. It's like many other things. You don't want to be the cheapest because that may mean that you're not taking care of your infrastructure. We don't know. And we have to look at what's best for Westminster and in the long term. Is everything working fine right now? You bet. It's not the job of city council to look at today. It's our job to look 20 years down the future so that people are not looking at us and saying, well, how come you didn't do this? Well, I'll be long gone by then and that'll be okay. But, those are the hard conversations that we've had for over 2 years now too, almost weekly. And so we believe, a majority of us believe that the path, and we've got a way to manage those costs into the future.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that question, Dave, and Councilor Seymour for answering that and providing more clarity around. I think it shows people when you start explaining things like you were doing with the different municipalities and how the metrics that they use and what they factor in, that there are a lot of differences that are included in that to consider and for you all to be reviewing and incorporating in your discussion. But thank you so much for Dave for that question. I don't see any additional questions or comments that have come our way. So I think that's given you a quick second to have an inhale of some air. And now I'll turn it back over to you to continue on with things that have transpired since that session.
There was, and Dave Carpenter brought up a good point. There was a town hall this last Thursday. I've had the opportunity to go back and listen to it a couple times. It worked out a little differently than our town halls because I guess the weather was absolutely horrible here that night and only 55 people wanted to get soaked. But it ended up being the mayor let it go a little bit farther as far as passing a microphone around. there was some frustration heard, and these are not frustrations that are sadly unique to Westminster. What are we going to do about homelessness? What are we going to do about excessive traffic, especially loud traffic that disturbs our residents, racing or speed exhibition, motorcycles with pipes that obviously are not legal. And we're coming into summertime as it gets warmer and everybody opens up their windows. It's going to seem noisier. So these are not unique to Westminster, and we don't. Unfortunately, we don't have a magic wand. And I mentioned this last night's council meeting is that the Supreme Court has ruled that it's not illegal to be homeless. So we can't arrest people for being homeless, but we have a process that has timelines in place on it that are frustrating for everyone. But we also we hear it from both sides, is that we need to clean these people up, we need to move them along, and then the other side says you're terrible people for moving these people along. You need to be more compassionate. So we have to find a balance. Everything is about balance. Everything is about give and take. And where can we find that? There was a very frustrated business owner that our staff has reached out to, and all the questions that were asked are being followed up on about how it's affecting their business. And I absolutely understand how that happens, because we dealt with it here at our business this last summer. So we're not ignoring these issues. We have a plan in place that's legally defensible, and we are spending money on it because our residents want us to spend on it. We are not spending $2 million a year on it. That was asserted. We have $1 million that we got in ARPA money that we set aside for some solutions based in cooperation with some of our regional partners, Arvada and Wheat Ridge, to get full services. So as a municipality, though, it is in my belief, it is not our job to solve all the woes of the world. Our counties get human services dollars that we do not have access to, so we need their partnership too, and we're always working with them in that.
Yeah, and I think it just speaks to, like you were sharing earlier, right? And for those that are just now joining us, right? Like sometimes in the discussion when you hop in and you only hear this part, like it's not our plan, right? Like you don't hear the greater context. So I do ask that you guys rewind and rewatch fully, but I would summarize what you're referring to, Councilor Seymour, is that this is a regional issue, even a statewide issue, and to some degree, even a national issue as well. And so where it makes the most sense for our elected officials in our local municipalities to partner with other area organizations that are already providing solutions or looking to provide solutions, that provides the strength and the resources to be able to come up with some ways of tackling these issues that are coming up in our town halls and other meetings that our residents are experiencing.
And we have many more engagements set up in the months to come. And so there'll be other opportunities, and there's always a way to contact it. Every page of our cityofwestminster.us site has a way to click a button and contact council. You can just click a button and we all get the same email, which we prefer because we then share that email back if we get an individual email. But then it also goes to our city manager, our community outreach person, Kit Redmer, who does a great job. And so, any of those questions, please encourage people to email us. We understand that there's frustrations out there. Post-pandemic, some things seem to gone awry in people's mind, where they think it's okay to do certain things, especially from car thefts and catalytic converter thefts and car speeding. And we had 4 bills in front of us last night to deal specifically with those issues. Majority of council asked our team, that includes the municipal court judge, city attorney's office, the police department, prosecutor's office, to get together and see what we can do locally to address catalytic converter thefts, restitution to victims of those thefts. These things before ended up on the county side, and the county just has no bandwidth for it right now, or there's other issues with incarceration with individuals that continually steal cars. On the speeding side of it is, we had a long discussion last night about the civil forfeiture of a person's property, which all of us on council have a concern about. But we have people that are racing vehicles, putting our residents at risk, and we've had a terrible, tragic death a year and a half ago from a racing incident where someone was killed. How do we deal with that when sometimes the owner of the car is not the driver because they switch cars and drive each other's cars so that they can't be identified as the driver of that car? So how do we go through a process, a 3 and 4 step process, to impound that vehicle as a public nuisance, to then make a determination whether that car continues to be our laws? And so we had quite a debate on that last night. We're going to be watching this carefully. Our police have an idea who these people are and who the cars are more specifically, but we can't chase them. And they know that if they go 100 miles an hour, we're not going to go after them. And so then they think they get off scot-free. And our residents have told us loud and clear, we have had enough. And so last night we dealt with that in 4 different ways.
Thank you so much for that timely update. This question comes to us from Dave. The more we're talking about some of these thefts that are going on, especially with those catalytic converters and other car thefts that are out there, primarily public safety question. And what it actually reminded me is that it's been a little while since I've had our police chief on here. And so I think it might add clarity if I can re-invite our new official, right? Police official, Chief Hobart, since I haven't had him in a while on here, to kind of speak to the department, where they're at with their police officers and what their plan and strategy is. I think that always helps to guide people's understanding of how they actually operate. But if you can speak to this particular question from Dave, he's sharing, would it be helpful to have the visibility of police officers in those areas that you're seeing more of these issues take place? So more speeding take place or more car thefts take place. What can you speak to, if you can, on this? And again, I'll do my best to also invite and welcome our police department on here to be able to answer those questions.
Yeah, that would be a great opportunity. Chief Howard is now at 60 days in looking at the weekly reports. There have been in the last several months a significant uptick of traffic stops. We have what we call beats in our city, and we everyone on the weekly reports, in most cases, every week over the last couple months, the number one stop has been traffic stops. So we are dealing with that. We are getting our officers on the streets. We even noticed in last week's report, there was a couple, and this was brand new, about getting officers out on the ground where we have foot patrols in certain areas. And so out of their cars in high areas. And they are doing high enforcement saturations in certain areas to slow people down. In past years, that probably would have stuck a little bit longer, but now it doesn't matter time of day or night. I had a car pass me on 36 the other day, and there was no way I could imagine how fast they were going. And it's amazing someone didn't get killed. But we've had officers pull over people on 36 doing 117 miles an hour in the past 2 months. And so on our side streets and our feeder streets, we hear this throughout the entire city, people just flying. And so we don't have enough police officers to be on every corner, but we are taking areas that are high enforcement, and our officers are now writing a considerable amount of tickets. That is not our goal. Our goal is to change behavior, and the behavior that came during the pandemic just seems to have stuck around. And so we are doing targeted high enforcement with our partners on street racings at night. We are trying to track certain ways that they get together and meet up for these contests. And then just the people that the speed exhibition is, where you've got one car tearing down a street at night that you can hear 5 blocks from where you live, and you wonder, what the heck, how fast is that person going? that's even harder to track because then we'd have to have a police officer there. And traffic is important, but if a police officer's screen is full of issues that have to deal with domestic violence, crimes against people, those are our priorities. But we are building back to trying to get to our full complement of police officers. We're still short.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question, Dave, and Councilor Seymour for thoroughly answering that for us. And again, we'll try and welcome our partners from PD on here for all of you that might be interested in some of those questions. We still have a couple of minutes left. Were there other additional comments that you wanted to share from yesterday's meeting, Councilor Seymour?
Well, the one thing that moved all of us at the dais last night, we heard from the room was full. We were voting to change Trendwood Park to recognize a 15-year educator, Joe T. Bockhorst. We heard from friends. We heard from students that he taught in third grade that are now probably out of high school, and how this man, this teacher, this lifelong Westminster people's lives at Betty Adams Elementary. And so the Trendwood Park near there. And we heard, good thing, Councilor Emmons put it best, good thing we had tissues on the dais last night, because including hearing from a good friend of Joe's, Mr. T, because it's easier to pronounce that than his last name. Parker Brown, current chair, came up and talked to us about Mr. T is a teacher for his kids, for an incredible influence that he's had at the school and in the community, and as a soccer coach, and all the lives that he had touched. So that was a great part of our evening. We don't always get public comments that are throughout the entire comment period that are that moving. And so council approved on a unanimous vote to rename Trendwood Park to DeBockhorst Park in honor of Joe DeBockhorst. So that made most of our nights.
Yeah, I bet. And you're spot on. It's not every time that the room is full and there are those moving remarks or the positive remarks that are out there. So so nice of you to share. Were there any other, I know like this, I feel like it hasn't been 30 minutes, but it's so close to the 30-minute mark that I'm just like, oh my gosh, was there something else you wanted to get out there before I let you go? And then Parker is thanking you quickly for the opportunity to speak and share some of those remarks at public comment period at City Council.
Absolutely. Just the last thing we wrapped up on old business last night was to pass the on second reading the short-term rental regulations into, we've been looking at this for a couple of years now. Pandemic slowed some of that down, but we know for a fact that people are renting their homes in our city for short-term rentals. There are people that believe that that is their right as a owner of that property, and there are people on the other side that say no, that you shouldn't have that because that's part of our residence. We don't want businesses in there. But my thought was, whether we like it or not, they're out there. They're in almost every community across the country, as I've used them before myself. And so how are we going to bring these into the, to manage? Are we going to put around short-term rentals? We can't just ignore them. They're not going to go away. And so how do we manage them? How can we make sure that they come into our inspection program for long-term rentals to make sure that these units are meeting the health and safety requirements of our city? So that was passed last night on second reading. So that was our final part of business last night.
Well, thank you so much for that thorough summary, Councilor Seymour. We've talked about study session last week. We've also highlighted the town hall meeting that was last Thursday, and we've highlighted a few of the items that were discussed at City Council meeting yesterday as well. So for those of you that are joining us now or rewatching this at a later point, you can always give us the hashtag replay so we know you tuned in. If you DM us a question or you type in a question, we're no longer live. We will get that over to Councilor Seymour, and as he shared, their phone numbers, their emails, all of that is available on the city's website. We'll be sure to also drop that in the chat for you as well. And since it's Tuesday, just wanted to remind you all that we do have a network welcome that's tomorrow, our usual Wednesday setup. And then moving forward every month, we will be having one update from our Jefferson County Commissioner, Tracy Kraft Tharp. So stay tuned for those so we can start hearing those updates on a once a month basis for you all. And I do look forward to continuing to tune in and engage, and thank each of you for taking the time to be educated and informed about what's going on. And of course, to Councilor Seymour for fitting us into such a busy travel slash, work, running your own business slash running, at the dais and representing us and everything like that. So we appreciate all you do for us, and want to ask you to stay with me as I close out.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.